Welcome everyone. This is our third event in the series celebrating the launch of our forthcoming Postgraduate Certificate in Access, Outreach and Social Mobility. That's in partnership with the University of Wolverhampton and Aspire to HE. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sam Holmes. I'm the CEO of Causeway Education. We're a charity helping young people overcome barriers in accessing HE and apprenticeships. And we focus specifically on the crunch points in young people's journeys where expert support can make a decisive impact. So just before we get into the business of our event today, just a bit of housekeeping. So as you can see, we're being recorded and this will be shared with all of you and with other people who have registered for the session today. So just bear that in mind. If you could stay on mute throughout, that'd be much appreciated to make sure we don't get interference with the noise. And there will be a chance for questions after all of the speakers have spoken. So there will be a chance to kind of unmute and ask questions or put questions in the chat later on in the session. So onto the session today, and today's about hearing some more personal perspectives from people who are making a real difference across the sector. It's a chance to reflect not only on what we've come to understand about supporting social mobility, but also about how that awareness has come about. I've absolutely no idea what any of our speakers are going to say, which is quite exciting. We've left it completely up to them. So yeah, I'm as excited as you are, hopefully, to hear what is coming up. The speakers that we have today represent a diverse range of professional backgrounds and experiences. I'm going to let them introduce themselves properly. I don't want to run the risk of treading on the toes of their penny drop moments in trying to summarize some of their key achievements. So I will leave that down to them. But you're going to hear from Chris Millward, Director of Fair Access and Participation at the Office for Students, then from Christine Kinnear, Founder and CEO of With Insight Education, and also a trustee of Causeway. Rick Lee, Chief People Officer from Willmott, Dixon, and then Habib Patel, who is Initiative Lead at Star Academies Trust. And after they've all spoken, there'll be some time for a Q&A with all the panelists. So without further ado, I'm going to hand straight over to Chris Millward.
Okay, thanks, Sam, and hi, everyone. And thanks for giving me a chance to contribute a penny drop moment. I'm going to cheat, I'm afraid, and give you a kind of series of penny drop moments, which stem from my first meeting with students in my role as Director for Fair Access and Participation, right through to the last one I had, which was at the University of Warwick just the other week. Each of those meetings has been unique, demonstrating that universities and colleges across this country are much more diverse than is often portrayed and perceived. All of them have, though, involved a roundtable with students, generally students who are supported through the university or college's access and participation plan, often shepherded by a senior manager, maybe one of you, who then kind of cautiously retreats from the room to let them say what they really think. These students are usually the first in their family to go to university, from communities and schools where that's the exception rather than the norm. They sometimes have experience of care or have been caring for others. They may have specific impairments that affect their studies. They may be in a race or ethnic minority on campus, and they may be entering university or college later in life. Often they have combinations of those characteristics. If you work with students like these, and I know that most of you do, you'll know how clearly they describe the path they've taken. So the moment they knew they wanted to go to university, the barriers in the way, who and what made the difference, how it feels to be there, what they want to do next. They can articulate in a way that those who've progressed inevitably to university or college can't. What it took to get there, the achievement of getting there, its intellectual and personal impact, and what it now makes possible. They also articulate how tough it can be, the persistence and resilience it continues to demand from them, how unfair it can feel when others have had and will have more choices and opportunities in relation to their routes through education and work. These students are more likely to talk about expectations, the realistic perceptions among their family, friends, and community about going to university than aspirations. I often remind the students in these meetings what they give back to their universities. Students, I've seen really clearly, learn from each other, and staff learn from students. So a healthy and vibrant educational environment brings different perspectives and life experiences together. Universities tend to different degrees to be proud of issues like research standing, global profile, their buildings, their local links with industry and public services. But they're all, in my experience, exceptionally proud of the students who've travelled furthest to get there, and they want to show how the university has accelerated their journey. So that means that students can be the most powerful voice for access and participation, showing the next generation that people from their own schools and communities can succeed, whilst raising the ambitions of senior leadership and governors and holding them to account. In addition to enlightening universities, student perspectives like these can illuminate some of the conceptual questions that run through our work on access and participation in England. For example, what we mean by promoting equality of opportunity, which is the statutory basis for universities' access and participation plans, or indeed fair access, as in my job title. These questions were important to me when I started this work, because I saw quite a lot of concern with promoting opportunity in relation to access by encouraging applications, what one teacher called spray and pray in terms of a mode of engagement, more focused on that than equality of opportunity by ensuring that they lead to a more equal pattern, ultimately, of admissions, success on course, and graduate employment. Fair equality means that everyone must have a chance to succeed, not just that processes are formally open and meritocratic. Students' own stories demonstrate vividly the extent to which this isn't the case across our educational system now, and how it persists well beyond school. They show how difficult it is to bridge the famous gap between talent that is everywhere and opportunity that is not. And they show that it's outcomes that matter to them, getting into the course of their choice, having a positive experience at university, achieving good grades, and getting a fulfilling graduate job. The promotion of equality of opportunity is only meaningful if it leads to improved outcomes of this kind. There's no point to it otherwise, let alone all the effort we make on it. Students and their families rightly expect that to be the test of our work. That's what they mean by fair. That's it for me. Thanks, Sam. Look forward to hearing everybody else.
Thanks a lot, Chris. That's great. Okay, like I said, we're going to have questions at the end. So I'm going to hand straight over to Christine.
Hey everyone, my name's Christine Kinnear. As Sam said, I'm the founder and CEO of With Insight Education, and I'm also a trustee at Causeway Education. In preparing for today, I was just reflecting on the fact that Black History Month is just a few days away from, but actually our history can have such a defining impact on our future, because we really pull on what we've learned before and what we've heard before, what we see has gone before us. And thinking about my penny drop moment, in my case, not having anybody in my immediate circle, my immediate history that had gone to university meant that I made choices that felt that they were happening in a bit of a vacuum. So there was an absence of guidance and support. And ultimately, my university choice was coloured by where I felt comfortable, as opposed to really reflecting my academic ability. I ended up going to a more diverse university, but a lower tier one. And ultimately, as we know, that then risks your future prosperity. So 5 years ago, it felt very much like the weight of history was once again being defining university choices in our house. But this time it wasn't me, it was actually my daughter. And we were watching, could Britain ever have a Black Prime Minister? And I will never forget it. She looked straight at me when they started to talk about the fact that so many former Prime Ministers had gone to Oxbridge, and just said, Mum, I couldn't go to one of those universities. It's just not for people like me. It's not for Black students, basically. And honestly, it hurt me so much, because just like me, she'd looked at what had gone before and she was using that to define her future. And I just remember feeling this overpowering of emotions at that moment. I was upset because on some level I felt that I'd failed as a mum. All those talks we give our children about the sky being the limit, living your best life, whatever you put your mind to, you can achieve, that clearly had been insufficient in wrapping and protecting her against that giant of societal norm that she'd seen around her. Then I also remember feeling really sad, because here is a child that on paper had so much going for her. She had professional parents on her paternal side. She was a highly degree educated family. So her uncle had been to Cambridge and done maths. All of her older cousins had been to university. She had a supportive family environment, both educationally and emotionally at home. She went to a good school, she had strong grades, and yet she still felt that there were spaces that were beyond her. So she was living in a world where she wanted to go to these types of universities, but she was living with the sense that she couldn't. And that then led me to feel a real sense of anger. So for years, I think I had really internalized my own experience and really felt that it was because I had been a coward, not being brave enough to go from a very diverse environment where I'd grown up to go into a university where I'd be very much the other. But listening to my daughter speak made me realize that this occurrence was much bigger than me. And it made me wonder how many other children were existing with this can't mindset. It just felt so deeply unfair. So for me, that was definitely that turning point where I started to really passionately, at a very guttural level, want to work on changing the narrative for young Black students. In reality, it would be romantic to say, oh yes, I just dropped everything and I launched into my venture, but it was actually a good few months of ruminating on it, thinking about what form it could take. And then I suppose the stars aligned. I was actually made redundant from my current job, and it gave me space to think, okay, what is it I really want to do with this passion that I have? And I ended up joining Teach First Innovation Series and piloting the idea of a show don't tell mentoring program. And that's very much at the heart of what we do with Insight Education.
No, actually, I was calling you several times and you didn't.
Do you need to go on mute? So what we do is support Black heritage pupils to successfully progress to top third ranked universities, and in doing so better prepare them for the world of work. So we essentially, what we do is run mentoring programs aimed at 14 to 18 Black heritage students from state schools, and the ethos of them is that we provide them with a relatable role model. So we work with universities such as Durham, Imperial, UCL, Manchester, UEA, to name a few, and we actually train their Black heritage students to be mentors to our mentees. And we do that because we feel it's really important that by linking these pupils with someone relatable, somebody that they can see as their future selves, it gives them real clarity of what's possible. And it makes that future feel very tangible, very real to them. So one of the things that I was asked to touch upon in preparing for this was just how that penny drop moment's impacted on my own leadership and practice. And I think more than anything, it's made us super, super empathetic to the students. So we really try to know the students and then advocate for their voices to be heard. Because there are so many different stories out there, and we want their stories to be heard. We want their voices and their solutions to come through. So for example, earlier on this year, we did a student voice report, which was based on a focus group that we ran with the students, asking them what improvements and solutions they wanted to see within the university setting. And so I'm very mindful as we go through our work year on year that although I come with the very best of intentions, we all do, that's why we're in this space as we are today, we won't make the kind of improvements that are necessary if we don't actually reflect those young people's opinions and their thoughts and the solutions that we put forward to tackle the inequality. And in our case, dealing with Black heritage students, also tackle head on the discrimination that they can face. I think on a more personal reflection, it's the fact that my story, that story of my daughter, is one story, but there are multiple versions out there. So we have students for whom the challenge isn't so much they can't go, it's much more they just don't understand the process. And so for them, the role modeling aspect is really important. It's very affirming, and 91% of our students do tell us that it matters to them to be able to see their future selves. But actually what they really, really value is all the application guidance support that they get through the mentoring program. And similarly, the fact that there are students, many of our students are first generation, they are free school meal entitled, for example. We do have students that have come through the care system, but we also have other students that don't fit those WP criteria. And I'm very mindful in that, in how we speak about our students, and try never to talk about the deficit model when we're talking about moving them forward and supporting them, and actually going the other way and really trying to champion the great things that they do. So for example, for Black History Month, we did a power list where we just took testimonials of the wonderful things that they're doing, things that they're doing at university, outside of university, and just really applauding just how much potential and promise these young people have. So to wrap up, because I'm sure I've used up my time, my penny drop moment really started with my own child's story, but it resonated because it was very much crouched in my own. And she didn't fall through the cracks because I was there to catch her. And so the work that we do with Insight is try to be that safety net for many others. And my sincere hope actually is that one day I'll do myself out of a job, because we'll have created a new history where we will have students that can look only 1 or 2 years in front of them and see lots of other Black heritage students thriving at the very best universities in the UK. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Christine. That was really helpful. Okay, I'm going to hand straight over to Rick Lee now.
Thanks, Sam. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rick Lee, Chief People Officer at Willmott Dixon. I'm delighted to be with you today. You know, it's great to see everyone here, and I'd just like to share 2 penny drop moments for me personally, and if you like, one for our company. But first, a bit about Willmott Dixon. You might think, blimey, you know, who are they? What do they do? So we're a construction company. We were founded in 1852. We turn over about 1.2 billion. We employ 2,000 people, and we have a supply chain of 40,000 people. But we also have a purpose beyond profit, because we want to be a business that looks after our people and also the people in the communities that we work for. We build and maintain buildings for people, customers who care about the people who use them. And as a business, you know, we do want to reflect the diverse nature of the communities that we work in. We work right across the country, and we've been doing a lot of work to increase diversity. So, and we have to, because, you know, the construction industry has a skills gap. There's a skills shortage at the moment. And we know that 48.6% of the UK workforce are women, but only 16% of the construction workforce are women. So, you know, at Willmott Dixon, we're over double that at 29%. But we want, you know, if you come through our doors in 2030, about 10 years from now, we want every other person you meet to be a woman, and for the diversity, the whole diversity of our workforce to represent the diversity of the communities we work in, you know, particularly in London. So as a company, we want to see change. But why do I want to see change? Well, I want to see change because I care. I care about the sorts of working environments that my children are in right now. And I'm sure that, you know, if you're a parent, you care too. And, you know, my mum was a single mum. I lived on a council estate in Peterborough. She brought up 3 young kids on her own. And, you know, she worked for a boss who really couldn't care less. You know, that she was working part-time, struggling to bring up a family. You know, he just wanted the job done. And I saw the distress that caused her, and she thought she was failing us. But, you know, to us, she was the best mum in the world. So, you know, I want the workplace to be a better place for my children than it was for their grandmother. And that's the first penny drop moment. So, you know, my background, my motivation, and our company and our industry wanting to do more about diversity and widening access so that diverse groups of young people can come into our industry. But so that's the first. The second penny drop moment was, you was when Claire Addy from Causeway reached out to me. Now Claire's a wonderful advocate, very passionate advocate for the work of Causeway, and that's why I'm here today. You see, I didn't enjoy school. I went to a massive comprehensive school, and I didn't fit in. I was bright, I was ethnically diverse, and I was poorer than most of the kids at the school. And so that led to a pattern of disruptive behavior. And, after one particular incident, my physics teacher went in tears to the headmaster, and she said, it's either he goes or I go. And, the headmaster, he called me into his office. He sat me down and he kind of looked at me and said, Rick, what's going on? And he knew about my unsettled home life. He knew about my background. And the fact that he sat and listened to me for 5 or 10 minutes, I got the sense he cared about me. And he came to the conclusion that I needed mercy and not judgment. And so he smoothed things over with the physics teacher. I apologized for my behavior. I settled down, and we both stayed at the school. And out of a combined sixth form, first and second year sixth form, of 120 people, I was only one of 4 who got to university. And I went to the University of Nottingham. But things could have gone very differently for me. And, without organizations like Causeway, and without what can be achieved through the Postgraduate Certificate in Access, Outreach and Social Mobility, things can go very differently for lots of young people, and not in a good way. So we all need penny drop moments. So those are my 2. Just to wrap up, I'll talk about one that we've had as a company. And that was back in 2011 when we set up the Willmott Dixon Foundation. And what I'm going to do now is just share some slides with you. Just nod if you can see those. Great, thank you. So I'll let you read that for yourself. So this is what the Willmott Dixon Foundation, which is a charitable arm of our company, wants to do. So that's what we want to do. And this is the impact that we want to have. We want to have 500,000 connections, and that to come down to making a difference for 100 disadvantaged young people, or people who need extra help to fulfill their potential. So this is how what we've been doing in the first 6 months of this year. Again, I won't read that out for you. I'll just let you take a moment to have a look at that. So those are all, they're numbers, aren't they? You think, blimey, Rick, they're just numbers. But it's about people at the end of the day. And let me introduce you to Armin. So Armin is one of the people that we have connected with. I'll just let you read what he says about himself. And Armin helped us. He came on some work experience placements with us. I'll say a bit more about that in a minute. He helped us at one of our careers events. But we met Armin probably 3 years ago now. We were at a school event, and we had a chat with a number of the pupils. Armin was very quiet, very withdrawn. But one of our team got talking to him, over just after the event, and found out that Armin left home at 16. He was living in a hostel and looking after himself, and he really was really keen to start work, as you could imagine. So we gave him a couple of work experience placements. One of those was in my team, and he was a bit quiet at first, but gradually he began to flourish. And wow, it was fantastic just to see Armin grow in confidence. And I'm delighted to say, as I conclude, that in October last year, Armin started as a management trainee in our repairs and maintenance business. He got the job. There were 300 applicants, and he got the job on merit alone. He's now going to, study for further qualifications. We made a difference for him. He's now making a difference for us. And we can all make a difference through the work of Causeway, through this postgraduate certificate. And maybe we can make a difference just by giving someone a second chance, in the same way that my headmaster gave me a second chance. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Rick. That was brilliant. And I think, so a lot of powerful messages and powerful kind of images being conjured up here. So just before our last speaker, I just wanted to remind everyone that we will have a chance for questions and answers. So do be jotting down any thoughts that you had, including the speakers, if you've got any questions for other people as well. So do make a note of any ideas as we're going through. And now I'm going to hand over to our final speaker, who is Habib.
Hello. Yeah, can you hear me, everybody?
Yeah.
Great, okay. Yeah, my name is Habib Patel, and I currently work for a Star Academy Trust. And I've sort of got 3 penny drop moments in terms of widening participation, which I'd like to share with you. All of them not with the Academy Trust, their prior employments. And one of them was around challenge. The other one was around leadership, and the third one is around a sense of belonging. If I start with the challenge one first, when I was working for Darwen Borough Council, working with the leader of the council and the director of education, we got challenged by the Pakistani community. And I say the Pakistani community because in Blackburn with Darwen, we have predominantly the white sort of English community, indigenous community, then we have the Indian community, and then we have the Pakistani community. And the Pakistani community's challenge back to the council was, why is it that our boys are failing compared to the Indian boys and the white indigenous boys, i.e. the lowest performing in terms of GCSEs? And it was a really interesting meeting where the council invited community leaders from the Pakistani community, and some of them were teachers as well. And the director of education put a graph on a slide, and he said, listen, Key Stage 2 Pakistani boys are on par with all other ethnic groups. Key Stage 3, they're on par with all other ethnic groups. When it comes to Key Stage 4, for some reason, we're losing them. Okay, and that conversation was a very open dialogue with the community leaders and the community to say, why are we losing your boys after Key Stage 3? And we went back and forth, and we came to the conclusion that because of the makeup of Blackburn with Darwen and predominantly the boys being of the Muslim faith, both Indian and Pakistanis, the boys of Pakistani heritage, after Key Stage 3, were leaving the formal madrasa, which is the Islamic school, after school club that mostly all Muslim children go to. So they were all attending madrasa until Key Stage 3 with the Indian boys, etc. And then after that, they were no longer attending the madrasa, which meant that after 3:30 in the afternoon, were completely free. Meaning that there were no structured learning or role models that they could identify with. Hence the reason why something was going wrong in the Pakistani boys after Key Stage 3, meaning that there were fathers most likely weren't home because they were working. And again, I'm not stereotyping, but something it was reality. A lot of Pakistani parents were, especially males, were taxi drivers, hence they weren't in the home in the evening. And the mothers, the way they were behaving with the boys was very much different in terms of the Indian community. So the challenge was put back to the Pakistani community. And there we put up programs with the madrasas, i.e. the mosques in Blackburn, to say, rather than losing the boys at Key Stage 3, i.e. the age of 13, 14, let's put on education programs, homework clubs in the madrasas, widening participation, which allows the boys to come into structured learning again after the age of 13 within the mosque, within the madrasa, and see how we progress in terms of their GCSEs. And eventually over time, we saw that those who attended these homework clubs were still being engaged in the program, and how it was having an impact in terms of their GCSE attainment. And this was sort of checked with the schools that they attend, and they said, yeah, we're seeing a difference in these particular boys who attend the madrasa. They attend the madrasa, but what they're actually doing is preparing for their GCSEs. That was one example about a challenge, how maybe sometimes organizations need to put that challenge into the community and say, okay, we've got this problem, but how can we help each other, rather than mainly just looking at the public services to provide all the answers. My other sort of example is around the sense of belonging. And again, when I was working for Blackburn with Darwen Borough Council, it was at a time when we had the northern disturbances. So we had the riots in Bradford, Burnley and Oldham, and we were inundated with academics to say, why is it that Blackburn with Darwen didn't have the riot when it has the same ingredients, i.e. the makeup of the ethnic minority community, deprivation, blah, 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 blah. And it was really interesting where we once had a delegation from France who came to Blackburn with Darwen to see what's going on here, because we did some fantastic work around a sense of belonging, where everybody could have a sense of belonging in the area or the town or the city that they live in. And the French teachers came and we started talking about a sense of belonging, and they gave one example. And the example was, we were going around the classroom in France, this was in France, asking each and everybody, who are you, and where do you belong? And everybody was saying, I'm French, I'm French, I'm French, I'm French, until we got to a Moroccan girl. And the Moroccan girl said, I'm French. And the teacher said, the whole class turned around and said, no, you're not French, you're Moroccan. And it said straight away, the girl's body language completely changed. Whereas she wanted to be French, the whole class said to her, no, you're not French, you're Moroccan. And it was really interesting, as in the penny drop moment there, because that's how we felt when we went to school, where we would initially say to everybody, we're English. And the class would turn around and say, no, you're not English. Or the derogatory Asian word, that's what you are. So again, in terms of the sense of belonging, widening participation, I think future teachers or educators, very, very important that we take everybody and have a sense of belonging within our classrooms or our learning environments where everybody counts. And my third example is around leadership. And again, this was when I was working for the Training and Enterprise Council, and in East Lancashire at the time, we were trying to promote apprenticeships. And a lot of people from the Asian community were applying for apprenticeships, mainly in plumbing, electrician, the usual apprenticeship sort of, the so-called white male-dominated areas. We're going through the tests, we're getting the GCSE grades, however, we're not getting the placements. Okay, and it was really sort of frustrating for us as an organisation who were the funders of the post-16 education programs, why these individuals weren't being accepted by employers. And I say leadership because, and may God bless him, I had a manager who was white, male, who said to the training providers, listen, I want these boys to be employed by your employers, and I will pay from my fund, as in the government fund that we had, I will pay their salaries for 2 years. Okay, I want these individuals to be employed by the employers in East Lancashire at the time in terms of their apprenticeships in plumbing and other sorts of construction related industries. Again, I'm talking quite a number of years ago, so this is mainly 20 years ago, where he had some discretionary fund, widening participation, and he showed leadership. And I'll never forget that, because there's a penny drop moment where sometimes you've got to show leadership and say, no, we're going to make a difference. And he made a difference by making a commitment of paying the apprenticeship salaries for these two youngsters for 2 years. So these are my sort of penny drop moments in terms of widening participation. I hope you found them useful and interesting.
Thanks so much, Habib. So we did promise a range of backgrounds and experiences, and that's definitely what we've heard there. It's a really interesting kind of diverse range of experiences that people have drawn on. I'd really like to take some questions now, and they can be general ones across the panel. You might have specific questions for specific people. You can either drop them into the chat, or you can kind of put your hand up on Zoom and I will come to you. And while I'm giving maybe a minute for people to think about that and put those in, I'm going to cheekily ask one or two of my own. And I'm going to start off with a general question. I don't mind, I might pick on someone to answer it if no one wants to volunteer, but it's, how optimistic do you currently feel? And yeah, I suppose about what's going on in the sector, about what might be coming down the pipe, just in general, how optimistic do you feel about, widening access and social mobility? And maybe, I suppose, Habib, on my screen, you've still got the spotlight, so maybe I'll go to you first on that one.
Yeah, I'm to be honest, I am quite optimistic, because the reason being is I think the penny's starting to drop within the corporate world around diversity, okay, where for example, in my current job, where I'm engaging with employers and say the top four in terms of accountancy firm and Oxbridge and Cambridge, etc., and other universities, they're really eager to work with us. Okay, where they understand that they need to look at their strategies around widening participation, where it's not just a token gesture anymore. It's genuinely want to engage, because they feel that untapped talent, if it's not exposed or given the exposure it needs in the workplace going forward, it's only for the detriment of UK PLC.
Yeah. Okay, that's great to hear. Rick.
I think Habib's absolutely right. Absolutely right. I mean, if you take the construction industry, we employ 1 in 10 of the UK workforce, and we've got 2 pressures that will require us to change. We want to change. We are changing. The first is the skills gap I've talked about. It's not just women; it's all diverse groups. A number of our Eastern European, colleagues have gone home. And we've got plenty of talent in the UK. We really do. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is society expects industry to change and to treat people respectfully and with dignity in the workplace, whatever their background. So absolutely agree with Habib. Optimistic.
Brilliant. Christine?
I would agree. I think that we're now starting to see conversations in the approach to university, but also at university, that are far more honest about young people's experience on their journey and then what's happening to them at universities. And I'm really pleased, as I read the access and participation plans, for example, that you are seeing more and more commitments to doing things such as closing the attainment gap and recognising progression into the world of work. So yeah, I think that dial has shifted, and it's a good thing.
Brilliant. Chris, where do you stand on optimism?
So, I think the pandemic's been a real challenge for this. And of course, we know that lost learning is the biggest challenge in the most disadvantaged communities. So that's a big issue over the next couple of years, and it's really important that it's tackled. But I do agree with everything that's been said by Rick and Habib and Christine. It's just a shift in mentality over the last few years in industry and in universities, and much more honest conversations about it, and being more ambitious about what we do. And coming back to what I said at the start, if you meet students, you can't help but be optimistic when you hear their stories. They've been tough, but they're taking into the world a real kind of set of fantastic life experiences and resilience. And they're the most powerful examples for the next generation.
Absolutely. Brilliant. I'm going to invite Johnny Rich, who put a question in that I think he's going to articulate better than me, to come on the mic and ask his question.
Thanks a lot, Sam. And thank you to all the speakers for really powerful and often moving contributions. It's been great. I'm really interested in the idea of a penny drop moment, and whether or not they exist, how we would know. I mean, I think it's fairly clear that they do exist sometimes, but even are they the exception rather than the rule, in that actually it is maybe sometimes a more of a slow and incremental movement from one default position to another default position? Or is it a case of there is a penny drop moment, but sometimes it takes a lot of background going on to prepare someone to see, you know, what the penny dropping for one person might have been completely overlooked by another, but they were prepared somehow. How can we take all of this about penny drop moments and build it into a theory of change and a theory of how we would influence people's lives for the better?
Christine, do you want to, sorry to continue that. I just feel like
that's a big question.
The way that you outlined yours, I suppose the kind of two stages of it speaks directly to what Johnny was asking.
Yeah, I think that there's something about penny drop moments. They happen when you're receptive to receiving them. And also when other circumstances provide a space for you to do something with this new emotion or knowledge that you have. So I don't think there's a one size fits all aspect to it. I think ultimately it does depend on your particular circumstance. And when you get to a point where you have that dissonance internally, where you know something needs to change or you feel particularly uncomfortable, then I think then you pull on what you've experienced before. So in my case, yeah, I had that awful moment when we were watching TV, but all that did was spark some thoughts. I actually didn't really act on them in a way until I was made redundant, and then had enough time and space to really let it land. And at that point, that's when I thought, right, this is a recurring thought to me. It's a recurring pain for me. Something's got to give here. And that's when I decided to, change careers, essentially, stop what I was doing in social marketing environmental space and move over to education. So, yeah, I think it's very personal as to what you do with that penny drop, but regardless, in a way that a seed needs to fall in fertile ground, that ground needs to be fertile enough to receive it for anything to flourish.
Lovely. Does anyone else want to jump in on that question? I've got a couple more, but happy. Yeah, go on, Chris.
I was just going to say, I guess the penny drop was more about our own perspectives, but I think we need to be careful about kind of penny drops in terms of the activity and our work with students out in schools and colleges and universities. And if I've learned kind of one thing in 4 years of doing this, is that just going into a school and doing something exciting once doesn't cut it. You know, it's about really difficult, sustained engagement that really helps people have a path to the next stage. So yeah, penny drop for us, and the more we can get the penny to drop for others to be persuaded of what people here have been saying. But for people in schools and colleges, it's really about sustained engagement over time.
Great. Well, Chris, while I've got you in the spotlight, I've got a question that's come in. Is there still specifically for you, is there still a future for the term widening participation within the HE sector, given the focus switching to success and outcomes for targeted groups?
Yeah, it's a good question. Obviously, the term widening participation changed in the law when the OFS was established. So we shift from talking about widening participation to access and participation. And I think that was intended to be a reflection that we wanted all of this work not just to be about access, so helping students get in, but also supporting them on course and beyond. And I think that in itself reflected a sense in which we've been really successful in widening participation. But as Christine was talking about a minute ago, there's some really important differential outcomes that we have to tackle in higher education as well, and that the effort on equality of opportunity doesn't stop when you get through the door. There's then a set of really interesting questions about, does the higher education sector continue to expand? And you won't be surprised to hear that I think it should. You know, it doesn't mean we should all go young, full-time, full degree, but we shouldn't be capping the opportunity to progress at any time of life. I think that's a really important question for the coming year.
Thanks. Okay, I've got another one in the chat here. What informs the criteria your respective organisations use to engage specific young people, and how have you seen this criteria evolve over the years? Anyone want to jump in on that? I mean, Rick, it might be interesting to hear sort of what I suppose not touched by regulation in the same way as a university being pushed towards engaging specific types of young people, doing it more from your own strategic plan. What informs your thoughts, your kind of strategy about who you're going to target?
So I guess we're probably not mechanical about this. In other words, we don't have 10 bullet points, unless this young person meets this particular, let's not help them. So we tend to be more organic. And what I mean by that is that, we build lots of social and affordable housing. We work in a whole range of different types of communities across the country. And I think it's the community and what the community needs that informs us. So, if the community says, look, we really would like you to put some space on your site so that you can get some of our young people in off the streets to do apprenticeships, we will do that. We will bend over backwards to do that. If the community says, actually, we've got a rundown, youth centre, could you send a team, to help us fix it? We'll get our supply chain, we'll get free materials, we'll get our management trainees together, they'll go there for a weekend, and young people will start to come back. I was at a site yesterday, it's next to a skateboard park. And some of the skateboarders stopped coming because of all the noise and disruption, so we put up a graffiti wall. We got a graffiti artist in, they started the wall, the kids came back and they love it. Those sorts of things.
Brilliant, thank you. Another question, there's a lot of thanks coming in the chat, but I did pick out another question. Someone saying, I wonder about less obvious categories of widening participation students and how the categorization might change in the future. For example, at one point, estranged students may have similar needs to care leavers that have historically not received support. So if anyone has any thoughts about, those wider categories of students, what have been termed less obvious categories here?
I can say something on that if you want, Sam. So I mean, I think you are seeing kind of more sophisticated approaches to identifying students who are underrepresented in different ways in higher education. So more focus, for example, on Gypsy Roma Traveller students, on groups like Estranged, thanks to terrific representation actually from third sector organisations like Standalone. And of course, also more awareness of intersections. So when you combine circumstances and characteristics, what that means for different groups of students. So I think you are seeing more awareness and better data on all of this stuff. The difficult thing for people working on it is how you prioritize your efforts. And I think that's all about looking at your own particular context. What's your mission? What are the characteristics of the place where you're working and the students you have, and focusing your efforts on where you particularly can make the most difference.
I think on that point, something that's come out interestingly, particularly from what Rick and Habib have talked about, communities. And I think that there's a lot of pressure, certainly on universities, to target by specific, individual criteria and the intersections between those criteria. But I'd be really interested to hear from Habib and Rick and anyone else about what advice or reflections you've got about supporting at the community level. Maybe Habib, if you... Yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
I think with regards to supporting at a community level, from my experience and what I've seen is that we've got to provide the infrastructure for the community to engage. Not only that, just to engage, but to deliver. So again, in my previous roles, when I had budgets, etc., we used to spend quite a bit of money for the community to build that capacity to take ownership and deliver on some of these issues. I think that's where, when I want to use the word public sector organisation have a responsibility to assist in building the infrastructure within communities. Because once the communities understand the problems better than anybody else. However, there sometimes needs the infrastructure or intellectual infrastructure capacity to deliver on some of these issues.
Yeah. Just while we're waiting maybe for some more questions to come in, one that's come in for me, in fact, is about the PG Cert itself and how and when you can apply for it. So it kicks off in January, and we will send information out to everyone that is here and everyone who signed up for this event about the specific process for that. Obviously, that's being managed by University of Wolverhampton. So we will get that information out to everyone, but it's already possible to put your name down for it. I'm not sure if they've opened up the official kind of registration process, but there is certainly an expression of interest process that Tracy at Wolverhampton is managing. So we will put everyone in touch with her around that. But yeah, anyone else, any other questions? I do have a couple more of mine that I was...
Sam, I have one, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
It's not more of a question. It's just something that I saw on TikTok, and it was really sort of interesting and thought-provoking. And it was in a conference, so somebody had recorded this, where it was a conference on diversity. And one audience member, I don't know whether anybody else has seen this, one audience member said, listen, I'm the manager of a relay team, as in 100-meter relay team or whatever, and I've got one Usain Bolt, and what I need is another 3. I need to clone Usain Bolt for another 3. Why would I want diversity? You see the question?
Yeah.
So again, obviously, I've got my thoughts, but I'd be interested in other people's. These are the challenges that we might be faced with. Somebody might say, I've got Usain Bolt, fastest runner, this is how his makeup, and I want to clone him 3 times or 10 times.
Mm. Great question. Right, who should I throw that one to? Anyone want to step forward on that?
My response to that is, okay, Usain Bolt works, but there might be something better than that. There might be another way to run as a team that works better than just cloning Usain Bolt. And if we keep looking to what's gone before, we'll never find out what could be a more positive outcome. We'll never allow these young people to reach their full potential. So we've got to think bigger than just what's gone before. We've got to be prepared to always be pushing the boundaries and looking for different solutions.
Brilliant. I'm not going to attempt to answer that one. That was an excellent answer. Thank you, Christine. On the topic of potentially difficult questions, one thing I wanted to ask, kind of moving back to the penny drop theme, is there anything that any of you wish you'd understood sooner? And how might that have affected, I suppose, your professional practice?
I think something for me, everybody, and Sam, going back to your question, and it kind of relates to the first question, was a penny drop moment. And I personally think it's penny drop moments that create change. Okay, especially when you're in leadership roles. And I think providing leaders as many penny drop moments as possible sometimes is a lot more effective. Especially in the public sector, you can get into this syndrome of analysis leads to paralysis, where you're constantly asking for evidence, statistics, blah, 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 and then nothing happens because you've just led to paralysis. And it's penny drop moments where sometimes you're saying, yeah, you know something, that needs to change. Forget the statistics, forget the background data. It's just common sense, it just makes sense, sort of thing.
I'd be interested to hear Chris's take on, so that was really interesting, thank you. And I'm interested to throw that idea that you've just put out there, Habib, about the relative importance of personal experience and penny drop moments versus research and data in making the case for change?
I mean, I think both. If you work in a sector like higher education, you've got to go with the grain of their focus on robust evidence, whether it's data or qualitative evidence. So we put quite a lot of time early on into actually, reading the academic literature to go to universities and say, look, your own academics say this about society. We also put a bit of time into seeing what vice chancellors said in their public speeches and saying, this is what you say. Can you actually do it? And then, of course, as I said in my opening, students can be a really powerful voice in universities, more so now than ever before. So we did also put quite a bit of time into meeting with students and getting their voices into the discussion with their universities, challenging their universities to make progress, because they tend to be pretty passionate about this stuff and actually more diverse than the staff. So I think you need both. You've got to have the robust evidence, but also don't underestimate the power of stories.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that note, I will read out one comment from the chat here that you can see it anyway, but someone said the talks were fantastic, so insightful and valuable, and I would absolutely agree with that. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your thoughts with us and your reflections, and accepting a slightly less conventional brief than usual for speaking at an event like this. We really appreciate it, and I think it's been really powerful for everyone here. And I just wanted to close off by reminding everyone that the PG Cert, which starts in January, is open now for expressions of interest, and we are going to send around some more information about that. And just to stress that this has been designed as a really new opportunity to bring together those two threads of insights from practice, but also rigorous analysis and research to really look at what can individuals do to change practice in their own environments and get some way towards tackling these kind of massive issues that we're dealing with. And on the subject of dealing with massive issues, I just want to plug our last event. We're going to be in touch in the next day or two with a reminder about our festive finale. And at this event, we're going to be showcasing a range of ideas submitted by people that are tuning in and sending in ideas. And these are going to be solutions to the biggest challenges facing widening access to HE and social mobility in general. We're going to hear from a nice diverse panel of revered judges at that event, reflecting on which solutions could prove the most powerful. But we're really interested in the full range of solutions, from specific models of effective outreach or subtle tweaks in provision, right through to grand policy changes. So we will send out information, but we want everyone to submit their kind of answers on a postcard, as it were. What's your, we've gone from penny drop moments to your tuppence worth for what you would suggest for solving some of these big challenges in the sector. And that's what we're going to be reflecting on in the final session. So do look out for that email, and do just send in whatever ideas you have. You never know what you might spark by sharing that idea in this forum. By this time next year, you could be sitting where Christine is, running your own organisation, taking that to the masses. So thanks everyone who contributed today, and thanks to those of you who came along, and we look forward to seeing all of you at our final event, which you'll be hearing about.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks, everyone.